The planet Zithera stretched endlessly under twin suns, its sky painted with soft shades of violet and gold. Tall, sleek towers rose from the ground like polished crystal, shimmering in the light, while hovering transport vessels glided silently between them. The entire city hummed with life, a blend of advanced technology and the elegance of tradition. In the heart of this city stood the palace of the ruling family, a structure of flowing curves and gleaming surfaces that seemed to float above the ground. It was here that Princess Lyra spent her days, a figure of calm and poise, admired and respected by her people for her wisdom and composure. She carried herself with grace, moving through her duties with careful attention and quiet determination. Yet, for all her outward serenity, she had never known a day as unusual as the one that had just begun. A signal arrived at the palace, unexpected and urgent. A human fleet, sent from Earth to join Zythera in a new interstellar alliance, was entering Zytheran space. Humans were a rarity in the galaxy, known for their resilience, courage, and unpredictable behavior. The alliance demanded that they train with Zytheran forces to prepare for joint defense operations. And now they would be arriving at the palace, the center of both ceremonial authority and strategic planning. Lyra stood before the grand windows of her chamber, observing the approach of the human ships. Her hands were folded neatly in front of her, her expression as calm as always, yet a flicker of curiosity passed through her mind. Among the humans, there was a captain named Adrian Cole. He had been chosen to lead a small contingent for the initial exchange, representing Earth soldiers in this unprecedented cooperation. Adrian was tall and strong, with eyes that seemed to assess everything in their path without judgment. His movements were confident, but not careless, and there was a quiet charm in the way he interacted with others. He was not reckless, but his instincts were sharp, honed by years of experience in environments where danger was always present. When his ship docked with the palace landing platform, he stepped out onto Zytheran soil, scanning the area with alertness. He did not know yet that the calm and elegant figure waiting inside would be someone who would unsettle him in ways he could not predict. Lyra was informed of the arrival, and she prepared herself for the official welcoming ceremony. She moved with the practiced efficiency of a leader, her dress flowing behind her as she descended the stairs. Her attendants fell into formation, carrying devices and instruments that signified the importance of the event. Despite the grandiosity of the occasion, Lyra's mind was already analyzing the humans, their behavior patterns, and the best way to engage them. She had studied their culture, observed their history, and understood the significance of their role in the alliance. Yet, as she waited to greet them, she felt a slight tension, a subtle awareness she could not entirely explain. The human delegation entered, and Adrian was the first to step forward. Their eyes met across the space of the grand hall, and for a moment, the usual confidence and composure that defined Lyra faltered. She found herself noticing the firmness of his stance, the directness of his gaze, and the quiet energy he carried with him. It was subtle, barely perceptible to anyone else, but to her, it was impossible to ignore. Adrian, for his part, recognized the elegance and authority in her presence. He had encountered leaders before, but none had carried the serene intensity that Lyra possessed. He approached with a respectful bow, acknowledging the cultural formalities of Zythera, and offered a firm handshake when prompted. The first exchanges were formal and polite. Lyra maintained her calm exterior, guiding the conversation with precision. She asked about their mission, their expectations, and their experiences. Adrian responded with clear and concise answers, but his honesty and ease of speech made her feel something unfamiliar, an unexpected connection. He spoke not only as a soldier, but as a human being, displaying empathy, insight, and subtle humor that caught her attention. It was an unusual experience for Lyra, who was accustomed to leaders, diplomats, and advisors who always maintained a certain distance. Adrian seemed to bridge the gap between professionalism and genuine emotion effortlessly. As the delegation moved to tour the palace and its facilities, Lyra observed them with meticulous attention. She noticed how Adrian interacted with the technology, handling the devices and instruments with confidence. He adapted quickly to the Zitharan systems, demonstrating flexibility and intelligence that even her trained eye could appreciate. She found herself slightly flustered by his competence and the casual manner in which he carried himself. Normally, she would have maintained perfect composure, analyzing each individual quietly. But this human soldier had stirred a sense of awareness that was new to her. The first training session was scheduled for the following day, in the palace's simulation chambers. These chambers could replicate a variety of environments, from alien terrains to combat scenarios, and were designed to test both strategy and adaptability. Lyra had studied the humans' potential responses, anticipating their strengths and weaknesses, yet she still found herself intrigued by Adrian. As they entered the simulation room, she noted how his gaze scanned the environment, how he adjusted his stance, and how he adjusted his stance, and how he communicated with his team. He was precise, yet not rigid, analytical, yet instinctive. The combination was rare and compelling. The exercise began, and Lyra and Adrian were paired for a collaborative scenario. It required quick thinking, coordination, and trust. Lyra initiated a strategy based on careful calculations and logical prediction. Adrian responded with improvisation, adapting fluidly to unexpected changes in the simulation. At first, their approaches clashed, but gradually they found a rhythm that complemented both styles. Lyra experienced a subtle thrill in seeing how their skills intertwined, and she caught herself smiling briefly at the way he anticipated her moves without instruction. Adrian, too, noticed her reactions, the slight raise of her eyebrow, the attentive tilt of her head, and felt an unexpected sense of challenge. During one critical moment, a simulated hazard threatened their virtual team. Adrian acted without hesitation, taking the initiative to protect both Lyra and the other participants. Lyra observed with a mix of admiration and an unusual warmth that she had never felt before in a professional setting. She realized that her mind had been more occupied with him than she intended. Her usual composure wavered, though only subtly, and she found herself more aware of his presence than the scenario itself. It was a new sensation, confusing, yet compelling. After the exercise, the humans and Zitharans gathered to discuss outcomes and strategies. Lyra presented her observations with calm authority, acknowledging the humans' adaptability while noting areas for improvement. Adrian listened carefully, responding with respect and insight. There was a mutual exchange of ideas, but underneath the professional discussion, an unspoken tension lingered, a sense of curiosity and connection that neither fully acknowledged yet. Lyra felt a flutter of excitement at the thought of future interactions with him, while Adrian sensed that there was more beneath her composed exterior than she allowed anyone to see. That evening, as Lyra returned to her private chambers, she reflected on the day. She moved through her routines with efficiency, attending to communications, reviewing reports, and preparing for the next day's sessions. Yet, in the quiet moments, she found her thoughts drifting toward Adrian. She tried to focus on the responsibilities of her role, reminding herself that personal feelings were distractions, but the awareness of him persisted. There was a subtle fluster in her demeanor, a sensation she could not easily define, and she wondered if it would continue or fade with time. Adrian, in his quarters aboard the docking platform, also considered the day. He had encountered many leaders and officials, but Lyra was unlike any other. Her calmness, her intelligence, and her unexpected awareness of his actions had left an impression. He respected her authority and skill, yet he could not ignore the subtle hints of emotion he glimpsed in her expressions and reactions. It intrigued him, challenging his assumptions about alien leaders and their capacity for personal connection. The next morning, both returned to the simulation chambers. Lyra was determined to maintain her composure, yet she felt an undeniable anticipation. Adrian approached with his usual confidence, unaware of the effect he had on her, and greeted her with a respectful nod. Their interactions continued to balance professionalism with subtle personal interest. Each exercise, each exchange, built upon the last, deepening their awareness of each other. Lyra noticed how his presence caused her thoughts to wander at unexpected times, and Adrian observed how her calm exterior sometimes slipped in fleeting, human-like moments of warmth. By the end of the day, A pattern had emerged. Lyra realized that the human soldier had a remarkable way of challenging her assumptions, not through confrontation, but through presence and action. Adrian understood that the princess was not merely a symbol of authority, but a person with thoughts, feelings, and unexpected vulnerabilities. Neither could fully explain the subtle tension between them, yet both felt its existence and were compelled to navigate it carefully. As the sun set over Zythera, painting the sky with hues of orange and violet, Lyra stood once more at her window. She observed the ships of the human delegation, their lights flickering in the distance. She allowed herself a moment of reflection, acknowledging the unusual sensations that had arisen. She did not yet understand what they meant, but she recognized their significance. In the calm of the evening, she allowed a small, private smile, a rare expression of personal emotion. The day had been extraordinary, not for the events themselves, but for the unexpected awareness of another being, a human soldier who had stirred something new within her. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The calm and composed princess, revered for her serenity, had encountered a force she could neither predict nor fully control, a force that would continue to challenge her composure, provoke her curiosity, and awaken feelings that were unfamiliar yet profoundly compelling. The presence of the human soldier had introduced a new variable into her life, one that promised not only challenges and surprises, but also the possibility of connection, understanding, and perhaps something far more extraordinary. And so, with the twin suns of Zythera sinking below the horizon, the princess prepared herself for the days ahead, unaware that her journey had already begun, a journey shaped not only by duty and alliance, but by the subtle, unpredictable influence of a human soldier who had entered her world. The following day, the palace training chambers buzzed with energy as humans and Zytherians gathered for joint exercises. The room was vast, its walls covered with holographic displays and shifting terrains designed to replicate planets, moons, and asteroid fields. The simulations could mimic anything, from calm forest landscapes to chaotic battlefields. And today, the challenge was to navigate an unstable planet with volatile terrain. Princess Lyra arrived first, her posture perfect, her calm expression betraying nothing. Her long silver-blue robe glimmered under the lights, and her sharp eyes scanned the room, noting each participant's movements and posture. She had observed the humans closely since their arrival, and had already formed a cautious curiosity about Captain Adrian Cole. His presence unsettled her more than she liked to admit, a subtle heat rising in her chest every time he approached or spoke. Adrian entered moments later, moving confidently among his team. He greeted Lyra with a respectful nod, careful not to break protocol, yet he sensed the quiet intensity in her gaze. His instincts told him that this was no ordinary leader. She carried a presence that demanded attention, a calm authority that few could match. Yet under that poise he noticed faint flickers of something more, hesitation, curiosity, and perhaps even amusement, signals that made him even more intrigued. The exercise began. Lyra and Adrian were paired again, this time in a simulation that required them to navigate treacherous terrain while coordinating defense strategies against hostile drones. Lyra immediately took control, issuing precise instructions to their teams. Her voice was even and measured, commanding respect effortlessly. Adrian followed her lead, but when unexpected hazards appeared, a sudden chasm, a collapsing bridge, he improvised, guiding his team with quick thinking and adaptability. Their styles clashed at first. Lyra preferred careful planning, anticipating every possibility, while Adrian relied on instinct and rapid decision-making. She corrected him on several occasions, her voice calm but firm, and he responded with polite disagreement, suggesting alternatives based on his experience. The tension was subtle but palpable, each testing the other, neither willing to yield completely. Yet slowly, they began to find a rhythm. Lyra's strategies provided structure, and Adrian's instincts filled the gaps she had not anticipated. Together, they moved with an unspoken understanding, balancing logic and intuition. During a particularly dangerous section, a simulated landslide threatened to sweep their teams away. Adrian acted first, using his body to shield Lyra and the other trainees from falling debris. Lyra watched in surprise and admiration, her usual composure faltering for a fraction of a second. She had never experienced such direct bravery combined with instinctive care, and it struck her in a way she could not immediately process. She felt a warmth in her chest, a flutter that made her aware of his presence more strongly than ever. Once the simulation concluded, both teams had performed exceptionally, but it was clear that Lyra and Adrian had made the difference. They stood side by side, surveying the results on the holographic displays. Lyra noted every detail, every successful maneuver and mistake, analyzing how their teamwork had unfolded. Adrian, meanwhile, casually commented on her decisions, offering insights and asking questions in a way that encouraged collaboration rather than criticism. His approach was different from the other humans she had studied. It was direct, honest, and yet considerate. As the day continued, Lyra found herself observing him more closely than she had planned. The way he moved, the slight tilt of his head when thinking, the calm determination in his eyes. It drew her attention. She caught herself wondering about his thoughts, his experiences, and the life that had shaped him into the soldier she saw. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider someone else's perspective, without filtering it through protocol or expectation. It was an unusual and exciting sensation, one that made her heart beat faster than she expected. Adrian, on the other hand, noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor, the faint blush that appeared when he complimented a maneuver, the quickened attention in her gaze when he acted decisively, and the slight tension in her hands when he stood close. He did not fully understand it, but he recognized that this princess, known for calmness and control, was reacting differently around him. It was not arrogance or fear, but something more complex. A mix of respect, curiosity, and something he could not name. Their next exercise involved a test of communication. They were placed in separate sections of a virtual terrain and tasked with coordinating their teams remotely to achieve a common goal. Lyra's analytical mind calculated each possible outcome, issuing instructions with precision. Adrian responded with flexibility, adapting to unexpected events and anticipating her next move. They began to develop a subtle communication rhythm, a silent understanding that allowed them to succeed where others struggled. During the exercise, a simulated fire erupted in the human team's sector. Adrian acted immediately, guiding his people to safety and signaling Lyra's team for assistance. Lyra's heart raced, not from fear, but from the realization of how much she depended on him in the moment. She directed her team efficiently, yet she could not ignore the relief and admiration she felt toward Adrian. She noticed his calm under pressure, his decisiveness, and his willingness to act without hesitation. It made her feel unexpectedly grateful, flustered, and impressed all at once. After the exercise, both teams debriefed in the main chamber. Lyra presented her observations with clarity, noting strengths, weaknesses, and strategies for improvement. Adrian contributed his perspective, highlighting practical adjustments that complemented her analysis. Their discussion flowed naturally, combining logic and experience, theory and practice. There was no tension in their dialogue, only a growing respect and an unspoken connection that neither openly acknowledged.
As the training day ended, Lyra returned to her quarters.
She moved through her evening routines with care, attending to reports and reviewing data from the day's exercises. Yet, in quiet moments, she found herself replaying interactions with Adrian. She recalled the way he had saved the team during the simulated landslide, the ease with which he navigated the exercises, and the subtle attention he gave her during discussions. Each memory made her heart beat faster, and she struggled to maintain the composed exterior expected of a princess. Adrian, too, reflected on the day. He had encountered many leaders, humans and aliens alike, but Lyra was unique. Her calmness, intelligence, and poise were remarkable. But it was the fleeting moments, the tiny cracks in her composure, the glimpses of curiosity and warmth, that fascinated him most. He found himself anticipating future exercises, wondering how their interactions might evolve, and recognizing a sense of connection he had not expected. The following day, the simulation exercises continued, growing more challenging with each scenario. Lyra and Adrian were paired again, this time navigating a simulated urban environment with unpredictable hazards. Civilians were included in the simulation, requiring careful protection and strategic planning. Lyra's mind worked swiftly, calculating probabilities, risks, and safe routes. Adrian adapted instinctively, guiding their teams with quick thinking and flexible decisions. Their teamwork became seamless, their actions complementing each other in ways that neither fully understood. During the exercise, a simulated explosion created chaos, forcing both of them to act quickly. Lyra was momentarily trapped under debris, and Adrian reacted immediately, moving to lift the obstruction and shield her from further danger. Her chest tightened with surprise and gratitude, and she realized she had never felt so aware of another person's presence in her life. She maintained her calm on the surface, but internally she was flustered, her mind racing with thoughts she had never allowed herself to consider. Once the scenario ended, Lyra and Adrian stood side by side, breathing heavily from the intensity of the simulation. She offered him a rare, small smile, a personal expression she seldom shared. Adrian noticed it immediately, interpreting it as a sign of trust and acknowledgement. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, a subtle understanding passed between them. Silent, yet profound. As the day progressed, Lyra began to notice herself reacting differently around Adrian. Her usual meticulous control of emotions wavered slightly, and she found herself thinking of him during quiet moments, replaying conversations and actions. She realized that his presence was more than just a challenge to her professional composure. It was stirring feelings that were entirely new to her. Curiosity, admiration, and an unrecognized warmth blended together, leaving her both intrigued and uncertain. Adrian, for his part, felt a growing fascination with Lyra. He had encountered many leaders, but few had captivated him so completely. Her intelligence, calm authority, and subtle reactions were compelling, making him want to understand her more deeply. He noticed the slight changes in her posture when he acted decisively, the way her gaze lingered momentarily on him during discussions, and the faint tension in her hands when they worked closely together. Each observation strengthened his interest, though he kept it measured, respecting her status and the cultural boundaries in place. By the evening, both Lyra and Adrian had grown more aware of the connection forming between them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible to others, but undeniable to them. Lyra stood by her window, looking out at the twin suns setting over Zithara. Reflecting on the past 2 days, she allowed herself a private acknowledgement of the unusual sensations she felt, a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and something she could not yet define. Adrian, in his quarters, reviewed the events of the day, recognizing the same bond, the same tension, and the same fascination. Neither could fully explain it, and neither tried. They understood that the foundation of their connection was built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. It was a relationship still in its early stages, fragile and unspoken, yet filled with potential. The calm and collected princess had met a human soldier who challenged her in unexpected ways, and the confident, adaptable human had met a leader who inspired both respect and intrigue. As night fell over Zithara, the city lights reflected off the sleek surfaces of the palace, and the soft hum of activity continued below. Lyra and Adrian, separated by distance but connected by thought, both understood that their journey had only just begun. Each exercise, each shared challenge, and each fleeting glance was building a foundation for something greater. The calm alien princess had been subtly flustered by a human soldier, and neither could ignore the impact of this unusual meeting. The days ahead promised more challenges, more exercises, and more opportunities for connection. Both Lyra and Adrian anticipated these moments with a mixture of excitement and careful caution, aware that the foundation of their bond was growing steadily. And as the twin moons of Zythera rose in the night sky, casting pale light across the palace, the first hints of a deep and meaningful connection began to take shape. A connection built on respect, courage, and the quiet thrill of discovery between two very different beings. The next week brought an unexpected mission that challenged both humans and Zytharians in ways they had never experienced. A neighboring system had reported unusual activity near its outer colonies, and the Interstellar Alliance quickly mobilized a joint reconnaissance team. Princess Lyra and Captain Adrian Cole were chosen to lead the mission together, a decision that surprised neither fully trusted nor expected, yet both understood the importance of their cooperation. The briefing room was filled with holographic displays and maps of the affected colonies. Lyra moved with her usual calm, analyzing the threat with careful precision. She outlined potential risks, estimated the movement patterns of hostile elements, and prepared contingency strategies. Adrian observed quietly, his mind assessing the human and alien factors, noting the variables she might not have considered. He did not speak immediately, allowing her to present her plan fully before offering his input. When Adrian finally spoke, his tone was calm but confident. He suggested small adjustments based on human tactical experience. Routes that allowed for greater mobility, strategies for improvisation under unexpected conditions, and methods to protect civilians while minimizing risk to their teams. Lyra listened intently, weighing his suggestions against her calculations. She noticed how he spoke with clarity, respect, and insight, never dismissing her expertise, yet always offering practical improvements. The subtle collaboration intrigued her. Their teams were prepared and loaded into transport crafts for the journey to the neighboring system. Lyra and Adrian were seated together, sharing a quiet moment before the mission commenced. Lyra maintained her composed demeanor, but internally she felt an unusual anticipation. She glanced at Adrian, noting the steady way he checked equipment, the casual ease with which he communicated with his team, and the confidence that radiated from him. She realized with a start that her thoughts kept returning to him, wondering how he would react to situations she had carefully planned for. Adrian, sensing her attention, caught her gaze for a brief moment. He did not speak, but there was an unspoken understanding, a recognition that their connection, subtle as it was, had grown stronger over the past days. He respected her authority and intelligence, yet he also sensed her vulnerability beneath the calm exterior, and it drew him closer, not physically, but mentally and emotionally. The transport crafts entered the planetary atmosphere, and the simulation of danger quickly became reality. The surface was rough and unpredictable, with jagged rock formations, sudden drops, and shifting ground. Lyra guided her team with precision, issuing instructions calmly and clearly, while Adrian adapted quickly to the changing terrain, ensuring the safety of their people. Together, they navigated the environment with a seamless coordination that impressed even the most experienced members of both teams. Midway through the mission, a sudden cave-in threatened to trap part of their group. Adrian acted immediately, moving to secure unstable sections of the terrain and signaling Lyra's team for assistance. Lyra remained composed on the surface, issuing commands efficiently, but her mind raced with concern. She felt a surge of appreciation and an unfamiliar warmth toward Adrian. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel relief and gratitude in a personal way, not merely as a leader overseeing a team. Their team successfully rescued those trapped in the cave, but the close call left both Lyra and Adrian more aware of their reliance on each other. Lyra noticed the ease with which she assessed danger and acted decisively, while Adrian admired her ability to remain calm under pressure, providing clear guidance even when the situation grew chaotic.
There was a mutual respect that deepened with every decision, every action, and every glance shared between them.
During a pause in the mission, Lyra and Adrian found a quiet vantage point overlooking a valley below. The twin suns of the distant system cast long shadows across the rocky terrain, highlighting the beauty and danger of the environment. Lyra allowed herself a rare moment of reflection, thinking about how different this mission felt compared to her usual responsibilities. She realized that being with Adrian, facing danger together, created a bond beyond simple professional collaboration. She felt a flutter in her chest, a sensation she could not fully explain, and yet it was undeniably present. Adrian, observing her quietly, recognized the subtle changes in her demeanor. He noticed the way her eyes softened when she looked at the horizon, the slight relaxation of her posture, and the way she seemed more aware of his presence. He did not speak, allowing the moment to exist naturally, appreciating the rare glimpse of vulnerability in someone usually so composed. The unspoken connection between them grew stronger, each aware of the other's presence in a way that words could not capture.
The mission continued, and the threat they were investigating became more complex. Hostile drones had been deployed by the rogue faction, and their behavior was unpredictable.
Lyra and Adrian coordinated strategies to neutralize the threat, without unnecessary damage to the environment or endangering civilians. Their teamwork was seamless, combining her analytical approach with his instinctive adaptability. Each decision required trust and quick judgment, and each success strengthened the bond between them. During a particularly tense encounter, a group of drones cornered part of their team. Lyra issued precise instructions, while Adrian took calculated risks to protect the civilians and team members. Lyra's heart raced, not from fear, but from the awareness of how much she depended on him. The realization made her feel both flustered and oddly exhilarated. She caught herself observing him more closely than the situation itself, noting the calm determination in his movements and the quiet confidence in his decisions. Once the threat was neutralized, the teams regrouped in a safe area. Lyra and Adrian exchanged brief words, their conversation professional, yet layered with subtle hints of personal connection. Lyra found herself listening more intently than usual, her mind unusually attuned to the tone, cadence, and meaning behind his words. Adrian, for his part, noticed her attentiveness, and the faint blush that appeared when she acknowledged his suggestions or praised a successful maneuver. Neither commented on it, but the awareness lingered between them. As the day drew to a close, Lyra and Adrian led their teams back to the transport crafts. The mission had been a success, and both leaders felt the weight of responsibility lift slightly. Yet, the experience had also left them more aware of their own emotions and the subtle bond forming between them. Lyra reflected on the unexpected feelings she had experienced: admiration, curiosity, and a growing fondness. She realized that Adrian's presence had changed the way she perceived collaboration, leadership, and even herself. Adrian, reviewing the events of the day, recognized a similar shift. He had encountered many leaders, but Lyra was unlike any other. Her calm authority, intelligence, and subtle expressions of emotion fascinated him. He understood that their connection was still delicate, shaped by shared experiences and mutual respect, but he could not deny the growing importance of her presence in his life. Back at the palace, the evening was quiet, a stark contrast to the intensity of the mission. Lyra moved through her routines with precision, attending to reports and reviewing mission data. Yet, she found herself thinking of Adrian frequently, replaying moments of the day and wondering about his thoughts, his reactions, and the life that had shaped him. She felt a warmth in her chest and a flutter in her mind that she could not fully control. Adrian, in his quarters, also reflected on the mission. He had faced many dangerous situations before, but this one had been different. Working alongside Lyra had revealed new perspectives, both tactical and personal. He appreciated her intelligence, her calm under pressure, and her subtle yet undeniable awareness of him. He found himself anticipating future missions, wondering how their interactions would evolve, and recognizing the depth of the bond forming between them. The next morning, both leaders returned to training exercises, now with an unspoken understanding of their connection. They continued to navigate simulations and scenarios, facing challenges that tested their teamwork, adaptability, and trust.
Each exercise strengthened their coordination and mutual respect, while also deepening the subtle personal bond between them.
Lyra found herself more aware of Adrian's presence, and Adrian noticed the small changes in her behavior that indicated her growing comfort and interest. During one particularly complex exercise, the simulation required them to rescue stranded civilians from a collapsing structure. Lyra's strategies were precise, but the environment changed unexpectedly, forcing Adrian to improvise. His quick thinking and courage saved both the civilians and Lyra's team from harm. She watched him in awe, feeling a combination of relief, admiration, and an unfamiliar excitement. She realized that her usual calm and control had given way, just slightly, to an awareness of his courage and character. Once the exercise concluded, they regrouped, analyzing the results and discussing improvements. Lyra spoke with clarity and focus, while Adrian offered practical suggestions. Their dialogue flowed naturally, blending analysis with insight, and both felt the subtle connection that had grown between them. Lyra noticed herself listening more closely than usual, appreciating his perspective, while Adrian observed the slight changes in her posture and gaze that indicated her attention and interest. That evening, as the twin moons of Zithara rose in the sky, casting soft light across the palace, Lyra stood at her window, reflecting on the past week. She acknowledged the unusual emotions she had felt: gratitude, admiration, curiosity, and a fluttering sense of excitement. She realized that Adrian had introduced a new variable into her life, one that challenged her composure and stirred feelings she had never experienced before. Adrian, preparing for rest, thought of Lyra as well. He understood that their bond was growing, shaped by trust, mutual respect, and shared experiences. He felt a deep fascination with her, not just as a leader, but as a person, and he recognized the significance of their connection. The mission had not only tested their skills, but had revealed the potential for a unique relationship, one built on understanding, courage, and subtle personal connection. As the night deepened over Zithara, both Lyra and Adrian were aware of the changes within themselves. The calm princess had been gently flustered by a human soldier, and the soldier had found a fascination and respect for her that went beyond mere duty. Their connection was unspoken but undeniable, shaped by shared experiences, mutual admiration, and the growing awareness of each other's presence. The days ahead promised more challenges, more exercises, and more opportunities for connection. Lyra and Adrian were prepared, not only to face external threats, but also to navigate the delicate and exciting bond forming between them. The calm alien princess and the human soldier had begun a journey together, one that would test their skills, their courage, and their hearts. And as the twin moons cast their glow across the palace, the first sparks of a profound and meaningful connection shone quietly between them, ready to grow in the days to come. The final mission of the week had arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. The human and Zitharan teams had been briefed about intelligence, suggesting that a rogue faction was planning a coordinated attack on a remote supply station. The situation demanded precision, courage, and careful collaboration. Princess Lyra and Captain Adrian Cole were once again leading the joint effort, their partnership now strengthened by days of training, challenges, and subtle personal connection. As they approached the target planet aboard the Alliance's transport ship, Lyra stood at the observation window, her calm exterior perfectly maintained. The planet below was rugged, with jagged cliffs, winding valleys, and dense forests that made visibility difficult. She scanned the terrain, calculating possible enemy positions, entry points, and escape routes. Her mind worked like a machine, processing every detail and predicting outcomes. Yet beneath her composed exterior, there was a faint excitement, a quiet anticipation for the mission, and for the human soldier who had become unexpectedly central to her thoughts. Adrian entered the observation area, greeting her with a nod that carried both respect and unspoken acknowledgement. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, a silent understanding passed between them. Neither spoke, but the weight of shared experience and growing connection was palpable. Adrian had learned to read the subtle cues in her expression, noting the slight tilt of her head or the intensity of her gaze. Lyra, for her part, felt her heart respond in ways that startled her, a mix of admiration, trust, and an unfamiliar warmth she could no longer deny. The transport ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, and the teams quickly deployed to the ground. Lyra moved with precision, directing the Zitharan forces and communicating with Adrian's human soldiers. The terrain was unpredictable, and the rogue faction's positions were not fully known. Every movement required careful calculation, quick thinking, and trust between the teams. Lyra and Adrian led by example, moving ahead to scout the area and assess potential dangers. They encountered the first challenge within an hour, a narrow canyon that hid enemy patrols. Lyra calculated multiple routes, weighing risks and estimating outcomes. Adrian, using his human instincts, suggested an alternative path, that accounted for unexpected variables. They debated briefly, each presenting their reasoning, and then agreed on a strategy that combined logic and adaptability. As they led their teams through the canyon, every sound, shadow, and movement demanded attention. Lyra was aware of Adrian at every step, noticing how his movements were deliberate, precise, and protective without being overbearing. His presence reassured her, and yet it made her heart race in ways she could not entirely explain. A sudden ambush forced them into action. Drones and rogue soldiers attacked from multiple directions. Lyra issued commands calmly, her voice steady even as her pulse quickened. Adrian reacted immediately, covering her flank and coordinating a counterattack that minimized casualties. They moved together seamlessly, anticipating each other's actions, each respecting the other's strengths while compensating for the weaknesses in real time. Lyra felt a surge of admiration and a deep trust she had not expected to feel so quickly. She realized that Adrian's presence was more than tactical. It was emotional, grounding her and making her aware of the connection between them. During a critical moment, an enemy drone locked on to Lyra's position, and Adrian leapt forward, using his body as a shield to protect her. Time seemed to slow for her as she realized the bravery and instinctive care he displayed. She kept her composure outwardly, but inside, a mix of gratitude, surprise, and warmth surged through her. She felt her usual calm and control give way, if only slightly, to the awareness of the human soldier beside her, the one who had unexpectedly become central to her focus. After the ambush, the teams regrouped in a safe clearing. Lyra and Adrian took a moment to catch their breath, surveying the terrain and discussing the next steps. Lyra spoke with clarity and precision, outlining adjustments to their plan. Adrian contributed his perspective, suggesting alternatives that accounted for real-time unpredictability. Their dialogue was professional, yet layered with subtle signs of mutual recognition and connection. Each glance, each carefully measured word, hinted at the trust and understanding that had grown between them. The mission intensified as they approached the supply station. Hostile forces had fortified the area, and careful strategy was required to ensure both success and minimal harm. Lyra coordinated the operation with meticulous attention, issuing instructions to the Zitharan forces, while keeping Adrian's team aligned with the overall plan. Adrian anticipated potential threats, adjusting tactics on the fly, and protecting both Lyra and the soldiers under his command. Their teamwork was now fluid, almost instinctive, built from days of collaboration and shared challenges. Inside the supply station, the final confrontation unfolded. Rogue faction soldiers attempted to breach critical areas, and Lyra and Adrian led the defense. They moved in perfect synchronization, Lyra calculating, analyzing, and directing, Adrian improvising, reacting, and protecting. The soldiers around them followed their leadership seamlessly, inspired by the unity and competence of the two leaders. Lyra felt a deep sense of pride, not just in her team, but in the human soldier whose courage and skill had become indispensable. The fluster she felt earlier had matured into admiration and trust, a subtle but undeniable bond. The final moments of the mission required direct confrontation with the rogue faction leader. Lyra's calm intellect guided the strategy, while Adrian's quick thinking and adaptability provided the edge needed to subdue the threat. Together, they succeeded without unnecessary harm, securing the station and ensuring the safety of the surrounding area. As the last of the rogue soldiers were apprehended, Lyra and Adrian stood side by side, breathing heavily from the intensity of the operation. Their eyes met, and for the first time they allowed themselves a shared acknowledgement of the connection that had grown between them over the past week. Back at the transport crafts, returning to Zathera, Lyra reflected on the mission. She allowed herself to feel the depth of trust, respect, and subtle affection that had developed. She realized that the calmness and control she valued so highly did not conflict with these new feelings. Rather, they enhanced her understanding of human connection. Adrian, seated beside her, recognized the same bond, aware that their shared experiences had created something rare. A connection founded on respect, courage, and mutual understanding. Upon returning to the palace, celebrations were held to honor the successful mission. Both humans and Zytharians praised the collaboration, the strategy, and the bravery of the teams. Lyra and Adrian received recognition not only for their leadership, but also for the seamless coordination that had ensured success. Yet, amid the ceremonial acknowledgement, both leaders were acutely aware of the personal bond that had grown quietly, independent of public acclaim. That evening, Lyra retreated to her chambers, reflecting on the events of the day and the week. She moved with her usual grace, tending to reports and communications. But her thoughts repeatedly returned to Adrian. She considered his courage, his instinctive care, and the subtle ways he had affected her composure. She felt a warmth in her chest and a quiet excitement that she could not fully define, a sensation she allowed herself to acknowledge in private. Adrian, in his quarters, experienced a similar reflection. He reviewed the mission, noting the precision and intelligence of Lyra's leadership, and he recognized the influence she had on him as well. Her calmness, insight, and composure had been a guiding force, helping him navigate challenges with clarity and effectiveness. Beyond that, he acknowledged the subtle connection that had grown, an awareness and respect for someone who had become unexpectedly important in his life. The days following the mission were filled with debriefings, further training exercises, and continued collaboration. Lyra and Adrian maintained their professional roles, but the bond between them remained, growing quietly and steadily. They communicated with subtle cues, shared glances, and moments of understanding that required no words. Both were aware of the change within themselves, the recognition that their connection was unique and meaningful.
As the Alliance prepared for future challenges, Lyra allowed herself to embrace the emotions that had surfaced over the past week.
She recognized that being flustered, curious, and even slightly vulnerable did not diminish her authority or composure. It enhanced her understanding of relationships, trust, and the value of human connection. Adrian, in turn, appreciated the balance between her calm intellect and the subtle warmth that had begun to emerge, recognizing the rare opportunity to build a partnership that was both professional and personal. The story of their collaboration, courage, and subtle connection spread quietly among the teams, inspiring both humans and Zetharians. It became a model of cooperation, trust, and mutual respect, a human quality influencing an advanced alien society in ways that were profound yet gentle. Lyra and Adrian had demonstrated that bravery, intelligence, and empathy could bridge worlds, creating bonds that were stronger than any technology or strategy alone. In the quiet of the palace that night, Lyra stood at her window, gazing at the twin moons of Zythera reflecting across the polished surfaces of the city. She felt a quiet satisfaction, a deep trust in the human soldier who had become unexpectedly central to her thoughts and heart. She understood that their journey was far from over. Many challenges lay ahead, and the Interstellar Alliance would continue to demand courage and collaboration. Yet she also understood that their bond, formed through shared experiences, respect, and subtle emotional connection, would endure. Adrian, looking out from his quarters, thought of Lyra with the same quiet acknowledgement. He felt the sense of purpose and connection that transcended the mission, the strategy, and the dangers they had faced together. He knew that their relationship, grounded in mutual respect and understanding, had the potential to grow in ways neither of them could yet predict. As the night deepened and the city of Zythera settled into quiet hums of activity, both Lyra and Adrian felt a sense of peace. The calm alien princess, once strictly composed and serene, had been flustered and intrigued by a human soldier. The soldier, confident and adaptable, had found admiration and fascination in her calm authority. Together, they had faced challenges, navigated dangers, and discovered a connection that was quietly profound. And so, the story concluded with an unspoken promise. A promise of future missions, of shared challenges, and of a bond that respected both their differences and their growing understanding. The calm alien princess and the human soldier had come together through courage, intellect, and empathy, proving that even across worlds, connection and respect could flourish. Their journey had begun with duty and mission, but it had evolved into something far more extraordinary, a recognition of the value of humanity, the importance of trust, and the subtle but powerful impact of understanding and care. As the twin moons bathed the palace in soft light, both Lyra and Adrian allowed themselves a moment of private acknowledgement. They understood that their partnership had changed them, challenged them, and inspired them, and while the days ahead would bring new missions and unforeseen challenges, they also knew that together they could face anything, guided not only by strategy and skill, but by the quiet, undeniable bond that had grown between them over the past week.